Now the final process will be, we shall do a measurement, a continuing measurement of resilience, regardless of what we do to these communities, to see how resilience changes over time. Now, we have selected, this is a schema of what we want, how we want to approach our resilience programming. First, we want to find out what makes people resilient. What is the current state of vulnerability? Can we learn from the way communities are adapting, and what solutions do they propose? So those are the processes that are formative, the FGDs and the desk reviews. And then we come up with an innovations agenda. We come up with an agenda. We take this agenda to the Resilience Innovation Labs. It is torn apart. Whether it will be torn apart by social sciences, it will be torn apart by technology, or computing, or economics. Different people will look at this agenda, and then we shall stimulate our students to come up with solutions. But alongside that, we go to the communities and try to find out what are their priorities in different ways. And one of them is deliberative polling. So that's the process. I'll conclude this by showing you, for the Eastern Africa region, what are some of the priority issues that we've identified. Among that we found out from the desk review is the issue of climate variability. Climate variability. And we have just 4 case studies here, but we should look at it broadly. We may find that there's nothing we can do for any of these regions, but there's something we can do for other regions that are not in these ones. So the question is, the first thematic issue is resilience to the effects of climate variability in the Eastern Africa region. And we are going, for purposes of hypothesis testing, we've selected 4 communities. One is the Albertine region, where we are looking to at recurrent epidemics and floods. Recurrent epidemics and floods. We are asking ourselves, why is it that epidemics come every year in, year out? And they are closely associated with climate events. And these climate events, people from geography will tell us that they are predictable. Some of them are predictable. Some of them have become a little bit more exacerbated by maybe climate change. But a lot of it is part of the usual variability. So we are asking ourselves, how do we make communities more resilient to such events so that when they come, there is a softer landing? Then the other region is Teso region. Here we have recurrent floods, but alternating with recurrent drought. So if there is no floods, then in some parts of Teso we have drought. So how do we make communities resilient to the effects of these issues on their livelihoods? The other region is Elgon, which we know very well. Whenever it rains, like now, we begin worrying about mudslides, but also floods. So in the highlands, we are worrying about mudslides. But in the lowlands, we are worrying about floods. We are worrying about silting. We are worrying about river confluences getting blocked, and then the rivers burst their banks. And we know that it will happen. Even next year or the other year, we know it will happen. But then what happens that wherever it happens, people lose their livelihoods. And what are the livelihood safety nets in these areas? And the different policies that have been attempted. Should we evacuate people? Should we do what is the best way to, So we are going to look more at this Elgon region, the proposed policy issues, and try to see. And we shall take some of these issues to poll in the communities to see whether maybe translocating them to other places would be better than leaving them, or these other issues that have been proposed of urbanizing and other issues. So these are some of the areas we can explore community views. And then the flood-prone regions of Rwanda. Now the second major theme is conflict. As you know, the Great Lakes region is the boiling pot for conflicts. It's a hotspot. So we cannot talk about resilience if we don't talk about conflict, both conflict in the home, conflict in the communities, and then conflict at national and international level. So we are examining northern Uganda, and here our main interest is, why is it that 10 years after the conflict ended, almost 10 years ago, we still have all livelihood indicators, demographic indicators, health indicators, and then the LMS indicators, the livelihoods indicators from the LMS surveys, all showing that the northern Uganda is the worst in almost all parameters. So what is happening to recovery? Are we getting it right? The recovery options there, are they the right options, or the communities perceive it differently?